Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner. Pleased to share this Torah with you for Parashat Ki Tisa and Parashat Naso. When Moses descends a second time after the golden calf fiasco, he comes with 2 more tablets and a shining face. Exodus 34:33. Vayachal Moshe midaber itam vayiten al panav masveh. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. The Mefarshim explained that he took off the veil before entering the ohelmoed. When he left ohelmoed, he would explain the Torah to his students. Only afterwards, he would veil himself until he again returned to the ohelmoed. In the final verse of Ki Tisa, it concludes, Vara'u b'nei Yisrael pnei Moshe, ki karan or panav, veheshib Moshe tamasveh, al panav ad bo'ol leberito. The Israelites would see how radiant the skin of Moses' face was. Moses would then put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with God. The final verses conclude on the topic of Moses' face. How ironic that the rabbis de-emphasize Moses as a hidden character in the Haggadah, and possibly he's an anti-Christian polemic, to de-emphasize intermediaries between God's chosen people and the Almighty. Still, this section emphasizes the importance of Moses as an intermediary. The word Vayachal Moshe resonates with the golden calf narrative in Exodus 32. Vayachal Moshe. It's the same pronunciation, but there's different spelling. In Exodus 34, Moses had finished. In Exodus 32, it's with the letter chet, and it means Moses implored. Different meanings. Further connecting Vayachal Moshe to Vayachal Moshe is that in Exodus 34, it's about Moses' face. And in Exodus 32, it's about Moses appealing to God to temper God's anger. But note the literal translation in contrast to the typical translation. God's wrath is literally my blazing face. Then Vayachal Moshe, Lama Hashem yechera apcha be'amecha. Let not your anger blaze forth, but literally, God will blaze your face on your nation. That's not a good thing. Shuv mecharon apecha, turn from the blaze of your face. Further connections between Vayachal Moshe and face may be found with the burning bush narrative, Exodus 3. Vayar v'hineh hasneh bo'er ba'esh, v'hasneh einenu ukal. He saw and behold, the bush was burning in fire, but the bush was not being consumed. Ukal is the same as vayachal, consumed, and finished comes from the same word. Similarly, in the burning bush narrative, Moses turns away from gazing. Vayar Hashem kisar lirot. God saw that he had turned away from gazing. The word face is not mentioned, but the same motif is present, and it is picked up later by Chazal, which we'll get to. The connection is very strong in Numbers 6. This is in Parashat Naso, with the trifold priestly blessing. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha vichuneka. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God shine his face towards you and give you grace. May God raise his face towards you and establish you with shalom. 2 of the 3 verses in the priestly blessing discuss God's face. The following verse wraps up the priestly blessing. V'samut shemi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani avarachem. You shall place my name on b'nei Yisrael and I will bless them. Look at the next verse. This is in Numbers 7, verse 1. Vayhi b'yom kalot Moshe lahashkimat hamishkan. It was on the day that Moses had completed establishing the tabernacle. Kalot and vayachal and ukal are all the same word. The juxtaposition of God's face as a priestly blessing and Moses and the word kalot, these are all present themes in all of these narratives. As a side note, this thematically connects with the golden calf narrative because the Israelites are treated with the same ordeal as the wayward wife, the sota. And the sota narrative precedes the priestly blessing, so it's all interconnected. But back to the theme of seeing God's face, it's part of an earlier part of Parashat Ki Tisa, which is in chapter 33, when Moses beseeches God to see his face, and God only lets Moses see his back, or the back of his head. The word face is mentioned 6 times in that narrative. I feel that God's face is a Janus face, in the sense that it is graceful, and in a graceful time, it is portent of divine blessing. In the wrong time, it brings wrath and destruction, similar to the priestly blessing, and with similar words in Exodus 33, it spells it out. Vayomer, ani avir kol tuvi al panecha, v'karati b'shem Hashem lefanecha, v'chanoti et asher achon, v'richemti et asher arachem. And he, God, said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you, and I will be gracious, as in v'chanoti, resonating with vichuneka, to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. The word vayachal is itself a Janus word. It could mean something like is completed, like vayachulu, and it could mean something is consumed, like ukal. To wrap up, the theme of vayachal and God's face appear together in many narratives. Exodus 3, Exodus 32, Exodus 34, and in Numbers 6 to the first verse in Numbers 7. God's face may be a sign of blessing or God's anger, and the timing does seem to matter. Chazal already knew this connection between the burning bush and the golden calf narrative. See Shemot Rabbah 3:1. Ani bati laharot lecha v'histarti panecha. I wanted to show you, and you turned your face. Keshi bikashti lo bikashta. When I wanted you to look, you did not want. That particular midrash has very beautiful prose, and it's worth seeing the entire thing inside. The topic of God's face is itself complicated. Firstly, because nobody has seen God's face and lived, and secondly, because this is probably a mystical notion, and I'm not an expert with theosophic notions. So let's conclude that our vayachals and ukals and vayachals, may they be constructive and not destructive ones. And we can also conclude that our Amidah service has the phrase, Barchenu be'or panecha, which is also part of the priestly blessing. God's signature is Shalom, the bracha of Shalom. We want God's providence, we want His blessing, we want His face as part of the blessing, but all in the context of Shalom. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.